Okay, it's about 3 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. So hello everyone and welcome to our workshop today with Chittenden Valley School District Director of Student Support Services, Meagan Roy, and speech language pathologist, Deb Morris, and Amy Coach Dietz. So I'm Karen Price, Co-Director of Family Support Education at the Vermont Family Network and your host for today. Thank you for joining us for this Learning from Home Tips and Tricks for Families and Practitioners workshop. All of our workshops, including previous workshops, are recorded and can be watched on our VFN YouTube channel. The link is on our website, which is vermontfamilynetwork.org. Everyone who registered for today's workshop will receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording. So next. Vermont Family Network has been serving families of children with special health needs and disabilities and the professionals who serve them for more than 30 years. We are the federally designated Parent Training and Information Center, the Family to Family Health Information Center, and the Vermont chapter of both Family Voices and Parent to Parent USA. So next. So today's workshop is recorded. So please keep in mind as you share information about your situation. If you're comfortable, we encourage you to turn on your camera. Only people who speak will end up on the final recording. If everyone can please mute themselves unless they are speaking, that will be helpful. You can ask questions out loud or use chat, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to share information or links to resources that you found helpful in chat as well. We know that you can all learn a lot from each other. Also note that we will send out a PDF of this presentation to the registrants after today, so you will have access to the links for any resources that are shared. So next. So I'm excited to introduce you to Meagan Roy, Deb Morris, and Amy Coach Dietz. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Karen. I'm Meagan Roy. I'm the Director of Student Support Services for Champlain Valley, and I will let Amy and Deb introduce themselves when they come up. So you can go on to the next slide. And so we're going to share, we kind of broke the presentation into 3 parts. I'm going to start with just some general information about remote instruction and how districts support students with disabilities in those structures. And then Deb and Amy will really get into a lot more of the practical pieces of information and things that you can really take away and share. We left time for questions at the end. So to a large extent, if you can hold your questions until then, that will be easiest. But if you really have a burning question and you can't wait until the end, you can definitely ask it. I think Karen will keep track of the chat so that we can stop if we need to. Next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about remote learning. You can go to the next slide. But before I do that, I sort of put a disclaimer in. Obviously, we all are school employees. We're all also parents, and some of us are navigating remote learning with our own kids at home at the same time. And it sort of goes without saying that in this unusual time, one of the biggest takeaways around remote learning and hybrid learning and where we are is just sort of this idea that we all need to be gentle with each other. And I feel that way as a parent and also as a school employee. We're going to share some things today that we've learned because we did it wrong the first time or because we had to figure it out. A lot of times people may see something and say, oh, well, that's not happening in my district, and how do I make that happen? And, you know, I am in awe of everyone in my system who is working incredibly hard to make learning accessible for kids. We all know it's not perfect. I think most of the time when it's not perfect, we know it's not, and we're trying to figure it out. So I just sort of feel the need on behalf of education to say, be gentle. So next slide. So this next piece, I think most of you on the webinar, whether you are a teacher or whether you're at home with your kids, you know this piece. But I did just want to talk a little bit about the two main models in Vermont right now that are happening. This is not exhaustive, but this is an example of what is primarily going on in our state. And also it's what's going on in our district. And that's what we're really here primarily to talk about, is what we are implementing here. And I'm going to try to focus on how we support students with disabilities in these constructs, because you probably know a little bit about them yourself. So more than likely, you're either teaching or your children are learning in a hybrid model, which is a model where students attend part-time in person and part-time remotely. And in a hybrid structure, the teaching is organized differently than it is in a fully remote structure. It's organized because educators know that kids are going to be with them for a certain part of the time. So content that's conducive to remote learning is delivered at home, and things that are really better delivered in person are delivered in person. So it's really orchestrated differently from the ground up. And I think that's important when we think about how to make that work for kids. The other construct in Vermont is fully remote, and this is either for families whose children need to be fully remote. This could be for districts that have an option for fully remote, and this is also for schools that are either temporarily or long-term fully remote because of cases in their system. And in this, obviously, schools attend school fully remotely, but it's also organized differently. It's really organized fully to be delivered virtual. There is no assumption that you're going to see the students right away. Sometimes materials are delivered periodically to families or asked to be picked up, but it's really designed from the ground up to be virtual. Okay, next slide. So when we talk about supporting students, and this is any student who struggles or a student who doesn't typically struggle, one of the things that we know is that there are kids for whom virtual learning works really well, and there's kids for whom it does not. And we learn that as we go. So regardless of how you're entering, what we would recommend for students, particularly students with learning differences, is planning and collaboration is key. Meet as early as possible. I know we're now mid-year, so that's a little hard to share right now, but the teams that are most successful are the teams that put their heads together really early on in the process. And the very basic things to start with, one of them is access, and that could be just the basic of how is your internet access, but it's also how does your child access technology? Is there adaptive equipment that's needed in order for them to access the technology? Are there things that worked or didn't work last year? We had a kind of trial by fire of remote learning in March, April, and May of last year, and we've learned a lot. So teams really need to wrap their heads around what does the student need to be best set up for success when they are remote. And the second piece is a little bit more kind of regulatory and form and function, and that is the team really needs to talk about how services will be delivered. So if your child is on an IEP, how are those services best delivered? If your student is in a hybrid model, are there some services that are best delivered at home and some students that are services that are best delivered remotely, and how do you divide that up? And this is not an option for all families, but even if your child is remote, are there some things that the student could come in for? So those are the kind of conversations that you want to start with pretty early in the process. Next slide. So this next piece, you're going to hear a lot more about the what and the how from Deb and Amy. I just want to touch base on how teams should be working to ensure that the accommodations are happening. So sort of the planning stages. Schools are really obligated to make the remote learning as accessible as possible, just like schools are obligated to make general education in non-pandemic times accessible. But it's just more complicated. That's the challenge. And even the best, most creative plans sometimes don't always work. So that's just sort of going back to that idea of we're operating in a pandemic and we're doing the best we can. But one of the ways you figure out and fix it, if you are wondering about how to accommodate, is about regular collaboration and planning. The IEP process already requires that teams develop programs that allows them to access the general ed being provided, and then that teams will assess and adjust as you go on. And that basic IEP process that's in place all the time is the process that you want to lean into during remote learning, because you're going to make a plan. You're going to say, here's how we're going to deliver this. Here's the accommodations we're going to make. But then you need to measure that and see if it's working. And if it's not working, you come back to the table and you talk to each other and you adjust. And that's really the most important part. We know that some students are going to have a hard time receiving all of what they need in a remote construct. And teams might have to come together at the end of this and say, okay, what worked and what didn't work and what do we need to make up for? That is still a possibility, but we also don't want to wait until the end. We want to continually be collaborating and talking about what we can do. Next slide. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Deb, and she is going to talk a little bit about how to support your own child if you're coming to this webinar as a family member, trying to support your learner at home.
Hi, thanks, Meagan. I'm Deb Morris. I am an SLP in the Early Ed program over at Allenbrook School in Williston. And really, I think I can speak for every teacher and every practitioner out there, and just saying how grateful we are for all of the hard work and support we've had from you parents over the course of this last year. I think it's been a hard year for all of us. We still have some challenges ahead, but I really see a huge positive in that we've developed some skills, both as parents and professionals, that I think are really paying off for our kids right now, but will also pay off as we return to a more normal setup, hopefully very soon. So as we mentioned, I'm an SLP for younger children. But so you may need to tweak things a little bit here and there based on the needs of your child and your family. But I think that what we'll find is that there are some general ideas that sort of span the ages and the domains that can really help us make our kids more successful. As Meagan mentioned, we're all parents also. So I'm also taking this from a lens with a high school sophomore this year. So I sort of have these two sides of the little ones that I'm working with, and then my older child who I'm trying to support from home. And I found a lot of it overlapped. Next slide. So I want you to think of something that you have done, that you've tried to learn, preferably as an adult, that was entirely new to you and really challenging and really outside your comfort zone. And just think for a second about how you felt doing that. For me, mine was mountain biking. And the picture you see here represents what my goal and what my vision was. At the time that I decided to try this, I had lots of friends who were great bikers, went all the time. It sounded so much fun. And although I hadn't ridden my bike a whole lot in many, many years, I figured it would sort of look like this after a very short period of time. So next slide. But unfortunately, I looked a whole lot more like this guy, and it really didn't go very well at all. I spent a lot of time walking. I spent a lot of time falling. I was scared. I was embarrassed. I couldn't keep up with anybody. And very quickly, I found that when everyone wanted to go, I was sort of avoiding situations, and I had a lot of anxiety, and it wasn't fun. And when I think about this, well, actually, when I think about that, I realize that that's a lot of the ways that I felt about remote learning, both supporting my son and as a professional, that I thought like, okay, we got this, we can do it. But in reality, it took a while. We fell a few times, a lot of times, and we still do, but we're making progress. But even beyond that, I really want you to think about those emotions that go along with learning something new and something that's really hard, and realize that those are the emotions that our kids are feeling. So we're asking them, especially if it's an IEP goal, because by nature, IEP goals, we've identified things that are tricky and things that are hard. And we are asking our kids to over and over again practice these things with us. So they may have a lot of those emotions that I was talking about, being anxious and kind of embarrassed and scared, and really take some time to think about your particular student and kind of how their behavior may be showing you some of the emotions that are behind it. Okay, next slide. So what our goal is to facilitate remote learning, one of them is what can we do to reduce those emotions? So first of all, keep it light and fun. Your mood coming into an interaction with your child about learning sets the stage for them for how this session may go. And if you come in kind of stressed and in a hurry, which we all are most of the time when we're trying to fit everything in, it carries over to how they feel about the moment. What can we do to build them up? So think about your child and really think about what resonates with them. Where can I slip in something small that'll really help them feel empowered and feel good about the learning that they're doing, whether it's recognizing that something is hard, congratulating them when something goes well, commiserating when it doesn't, showing that you're vulnerable as well. If they can see you trying something that's hard, they will feel more likely to go out on the ledge and try it themselves too. This next one, starting slow. I will say I think I'm pretty good as a therapist in doing this, but I failed miserably at remote learning with my son. I hit the ground running the first week or two of remote learning, had this whole agenda in mind of what he needed to be doing and when. And I came to realize that every time I walked in a room, he would very politely say hi and then leave, because I was always giving him something. I was saying, are you supposed to be doing your homework? Is this turned in? Clean the kitchen, do that. You have to get outside, you have to exercise. And I realized that what I was missing was that I had made this into my full-time job with him. So every time I saw him, I was trying to work with him. And I don't think that was effective in any way whatsoever. So really realize that we know that your therapy time or your remote learning time should be small portions of your day. And the fun part is really the big crux of your day. So don't forget to do the fun things too. Really small pieces can add up to really big gains. So practicing in small little time frames more frequently throughout the day, and then taking breaks in between, can really help your kids help them make a ton of progress. So remember to have fun and keep it small. Okay, next slide. So know your goals. I think it's important to be really, really clear on what it is that you're working on. So when you have an IEP, I know lots of parents here have children on IEPs, you have these long-term goals that last throughout the course of a year, and you may have several. And under those long-term goals or objectives that are meant to be 3-ish months between checkpoints. So when you think about it, to get to something that we're not going to get to in 3 months, or that we hope to get to in 3 months, there have to be lots of little steps under that. So you want to really think about what are those tiny steps, because those are the things that you'll be working on each day or over the course of a week. Then in working on those targets, you want to really know what is it that how can you cue and how can you model? And all of these things are things that your therapist can help you, or your teachers can help you figure out. But what can you do that will help your child do better? Okay. When I think about those tiny steps and what you can do, you really can take tiny targets and put them in lots of different places. So if you're really clear on what you're working on, you'll be able to find moments throughout the day where you sneak them in, and that will all add up to kind of that overarching goal that we're hoping to work towards. The tiniest improvements are reason to celebrate. I feel I used to work in the Birth to 3 program with parents, and I was always surprised when I would say, "Oh, did you hear that?" And they would say, "What? I missed it." And so I'd say, "Oh, I just saw this." And they were always so happy to have this tiny little thing that was such a big deal. Those are the tiny things that if you have in mind when you start to see them, those are success. So you want to know what those tiny targets are and what those little improvements are, because that is how you will work towards that bigger goal. Next slide. Okay, so this is probably the biggest part of this. So how can I get them to buy in? If a child buys into the activity, it makes them excited about learning. So what can we do to make it so they are excited to try? This is something they want to do. And I will say this is not always the easiest thing to do, and it will depend on the content. But if you can build an activity that fits their interests, you can almost always find a way to slide the target into that activity. So, and Amy will be speaking about this as well, but we're trying as therapists, we look at the kids, we try to get to know them, we get to know their interests, and then we figure out how can we take what we're working on and slide it in there so that they're super excited to do the activity, and they almost don't even know that we're pushing these little things in and we're modeling different things as they do something that they're just having fun doing. So for example, I think of the preschooler who loves dinosaurs. Well, I can talk dinosaurs all day long, and then I just slide in the goals that we're working on under the umbrella of dinosaurs so that he's super excited to do anything related to the dinosaurs, and I'm getting my work in there somewhere. So that's where Be Sneaky comes in. These are just two really basic ideas, and Amy again will be providing more. But something we do a lot is picking a game that a child loves. And in between each turn, you take a really quick turn of practice. So they practice something, it's quick, it's done, then you get to do something fun. Then on your turn, you model for them. And then on their turn, they practice it back again. Some kids would rather practice a whole bunch and then earn a game. So you can think about earning an activity, and I just wrote a few examples like building or reading or drawing. But they kind of like that undivided attention time. So they're willing to work really hard in order to earn that time where they don't have to have it broken up by taking their turns. And either way, really what we're looking at is the bottom line of how much practice and how much work did we get. And if they earn it in short segments, great. If they want to do it in one chunk and then have your undivided attention for a little while and just have fun, that's great. Daily activities, or daily routines and activities give us lots of chances to practice things, and never underestimate the power of modeling. So if you can bombard a child with something, whether it's, I know I'm speaking more to speech, just because it's what's familiar to me, but I think this also applies both physical activity as well, that if it's something you can practice as you go throughout their day, even if they don't realize they're practicing something that you're targeting, that's perfect, because really it gives you opportunities over and over and over. So for example, if there's some language that you can build in at, so say if they're working on pronouns like I, if you are cleaning up, you say, "Oh, I got the broom," or you're modeling for them and you do it successively a few times throughout the activity, that increases the number of exposures throughout the day. Reinforce is a huge one, and this goes back to what can we do to build them up. I encourage you to really think about your child, because what I find is that kids respond very differently to different kinds of reinforcement, and you kind of have to figure out what makes your particular child tick. So for some kids, they want a really big, excited, "Whoa, I heard that, oh my goodness." And the other kids just want like a little bit, they would prefer to fly under the radar, but they want to know that you saw it. So really think about what resonates with them. What do you think you can give them back that will show them that and mean the most to them, that you know what they're doing and you know they're working hard and they're doing a great job. Next slide. Okay, this is where the parenting and busy life comes in. Choosing your moments wisely. Life gets so busy, and all of us, I think, can have that picture in their mind of trying to cook dinner and help kids with homework and feed the dog and everything else. If you can find that quiet time, even if it's just a couple of minutes, where everything is kind of calm, the kids are in a good spot, nobody's hungry, they're not super tired, you're going to get a whole lot farther than if you try to squeeze it in when things are falling apart. And I know we all know this, it's not always easy to do, but it really does make a huge difference, because again, it really sets the stage of sort of the stress level, and our goal is to really bring it down. We want this to be fun, easy, and light whenever it can be. Knowing when to quit. So we all have sessions with kids that just don't flow. The kids aren't in a space to do it for whatever reason. It's not going the way we want it to be going. If things are falling apart, don't push. Come back to it later. Take a step back and give them what they need to get back to a space where it's going to be productive. Give your child some control. This is a big one. So there's always a spot within any activity where your child can regain a little bit of that control. Things like this are hard, because when something is this challenging for you and creating, which may create anxiety, part of it is that loss of control. There's little that you can control when something is that difficult. But if we can give them some control by, oh, hey, which one do you want to do? Which game do you want to do? What things should we work on? That little bit of control will help them come in with kind of this like, hey, I think I've got this attitude, which is really what we want to foster. Remember, not every session is a gem, and don't let this stop you. This one I have to remind myself of all the time, because sometimes it's that session that I walk out of and think, wow, that did not help this child reach their goal. It's the next session that I say, whoa, something just gelled. How did that happen? So sometimes those bad sessions, those bad work moments are going to be followed by something great. So don't let that stop you. They may fall apart, even though they're working hard. They're working to learn something. So it may get emotional, or it just may not feel like you're reaching the goal. That happens as well. Keep at it, because the more persistent you can be, and consistent, the payoff will be big. Okay, next slide. There it is. Okay, so I was also thinking, I did most of actually all of my sessions in the spring were remote, and I was thinking about the kinds of things that helped or appeared to help on the other side, as well as what helps at my house when my son is getting ready to go on. So really, I'm thinking about things that you can consider before a remote visit starts. So setup is a big one. Again, and this can also go back to control. Give your children some choice of where they are and kind of their setup. So seating the space that they're in, the device that they're on, and any supplies that they might need. So kind of have things collected, have that plan figured out. And also, these are things you're going to want to talk with your educators about, because different things work for different kids. So I was astounded at how different approaches resonated so much with different children. There was one mom that popped in and said, when I'm in the room, it's awful. And this child was 2. It goes very poorly. I'm going to step out, know that I can hear you, but I'm not going to be here. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have this 2-year-old who's flying around the room, because generally when his mom was there, it wasn't going all that well. She stepped out and he was right there. He was paying attention. He was trying everything. And I knew she was close by and listening, but she knew him and knew that he would respond best to me if she gave him some space. So I think that level of parent involvement is also different for each child. And you have to make well, this goes to the next slide too. So you can pop to the next slide. Making a plan. So you're a team with your educator, and communication is absolutely key. I found this to be something that has changed a lot for me in the time that I was remote, that I learned to be much more direct about what I needed. And I also learned that it helped me enormously when parents were direct with me, because I couldn't always tell what was happening on the other side, and what was working and what was happening before and what was happening after. And when I had a parent that felt free enough to come to me and say, okay, wow, this didn't work, let's try this. And sometimes it was all we needed to kind of move to that next level and make our sessions much more successful. So I think opening those lines of communication and really being open to feedback and being open to giving feedback is important. So the things, a couple ideas that I had just were to make a plan for visits. So it was really helpful to me to say, okay, 5 minutes before, can you make sure that, you know, she's seated, you know, in whatever space that we felt was becoming the most successful. Make sure she has this in front of her, but yet hasn't opened everything. That's the other point. Don't let the kids get into everything right before the session starts, because then they're done with it by the time you get there. And troubleshooting any stuck points, because sometimes from this side of the camera, we can't see exactly what you're identifying as a bump in the road. So be sure to talk about it so that you can troubleshoot where steps for the next visit. And then also be sure to ask questions. I think it's really important and helpful on both sides to know exactly how things are looking from each standpoint, because it's such a different mode that we're trying to get used to. Okay, next slide. All right, I brought a video for you, and I want you to think about a couple of things as you watch this. This is a little girl who has some complex motor needs, who I was seeing remotely in the spring. Her family very bravely took on the huge task of trialing an augmentative device during the remote time. So this meant that they had to set up this device with only remote support from both the tech advisors and their therapists, and try to figure out if their daughter was going to be able to use this device given her needs. So this is an eye gaze device, and the way it's set up is that she needs to look at an object on the screen to make a choice. They came up with a most amazing way for her to practice this. And I just want you to think about how she feels during this therapy time. And we'll call it therapy time because I don't think she has any idea that she's working. Are they successful in getting the target behavior? And will she want to do this again? And just so you know, when her mom turns her towards the computer, that's when she will be trying to make a choice for them during the activity. All right, you can go ahead and play it. And I apologize, me putting a video into this presentation has made their life a bit more complicated. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
It did work during the trial though, so.
There we go.
Oh, I know, I wanted to see that.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm he had a dog, E-I-E-I-O. With a woof woof here and a woof woof there. Here a woof, there a woof, everywhere a woof woof. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
You want to choose one more?
Okay. I did my
What animal next, Selma?
belly.
Yeah. Oh.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm he
Thank you so much for making that work. So that just was to tie together the idea of keeping it fun and just trying to have a good time with it too. So thank you very much. I think I've gone over, so I'm going to turn you over to Amy.
Okay, so my name is Amy Coach Dietz. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I am also coming from the parent perspective of when school closure last year happened. I had a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and a sophomore, and so it still continues this year. So I'm approaching it from both sides of the coin. So when closure happened, my youngest and middle child were thoroughly thrilled, and I was panicked and I didn't know what to do. So I Googled, and then I became quickly overwhelmed, and my family, after a weekend of not seeing me and having about 12 pages of handwritten notes and Google Docs with links that I didn't really know what they were to again. I just had this feeling, and then it somewhat came together. It's not perfect, but I'll be honest with you, my when I'm doing sessions in person, they don't go perfect, and I have to remember that remote sessions may not go perfect, in-person sessions don't go perfect, but it's a reflective process of what can I do, or how can I change it the next time, or maybe it just didn't work because it was the first time that we tried it. So I'm hoping to share some resources. Some of them you might be familiar with, some of them maybe not so much. Hopefully you'll walk away as a parent or a professional with 1 or 2 new ideas to move along with. So next slide. So after becoming overwhelmed, I had to go with something warm and comfortable. And for me, that resource is Paula Kluth. You might know her. She wrote You're Gonna Love This Kid and many other books. She's very user-friendly. She gives some really practical tips. During the pandemic, she was doing a tip a day from March 18th to May 7th. And these were just amazing because it was just one quick thing that you could try. And so these are still available on her Facebook site. All of these links are going to be sent in the PDF, but a couple of my favorites that she had listed during the pandemic, which actually worked well with what my classroom teachers were doing. There's a magnetic poetry site that I got the link for. She had also virtual field trips and scavenger hunt ideas, so which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So I'm going to go super quick so I can leave lots of time for questions and answers, and hopefully. So next slide. So technology support. So these are under the heading of Chrome extensions for teachers. However, some of them might be useful for students, and you might have heard of many of these, but just going to give you a brief 1 or 2 description. So Screencastify, most people have probably heard. Record your screen for up to 5 minutes. I know many teachers who are doing fully remote teaching that actually made Screencastifys for all the different functions so that families and students could go back and review those if they needed to learn how to do a process again. So that was one way that they use them. The extension Moat allows you to add voice comments to Google Documents, slides, sheets, and classrooms. So a student actually gets your verbal feedback when they go back and look at their assignment. Kami is an extension that allows you to annotate PDFs. So a lot of our materials are worksheets and things like that, and you can download them and then make notes on them, insert answers. Learning and Edpuzzle are ways to ask comprehension questions or insert assessments into videos that you might contain the content that you want. So Duelist is my savior. I primarily use Zoom in my remote sessions, but Google Meet used to drive me crazy because I couldn't stand not seeing the student and seeing what I was presenting at the same time. Duelist is the easiest way in Google Meet, in my opinion, to split your screen. So really, really simple and easy. The split tabs is very similar and allows some different layouts. So you can, again, Google any of these and they will walk you through how to use them. They will simply bring you, you'll say add extension, and then you add the extension. And then if you need further follow-up, my suggestion would be go to YouTube and you'll get a quick tutorial on it. Print what you like. So this is a new one that I found. And basically when you go to a website and it's super busy with visuals and you might only want a chunk of it, say it's an image from the website or just the text from the website, you can isolate that and then save it. And then it saves the step of doing a screenshot and then editing it and cropping. So I've enjoyed that one. Web Paint is a way to draw and add text to live web pages, and then you can screenshot them and use that as an instructional tool for kids on note-taking or highlighting what's important. And Night Shift is to shift the browser color to a warmer color to protect your eyes and ease fatigue. So the next slide is stuff for kids and students, but also might be helpful for teachers. So push to talk. So in Google Meet, they have quick strokes with 2 keys that you have to press 2 keys. So the push to talk extension, if you use the space bar, it will mute and unmute. And so this is really helpful for students who have motor control issues and aren't able to do the control, I think it's control U for muting and unmuting. And then the other piece is, because it's the space bar, if you have a student that's working on switches and you have a wireless switch, they could then potentially become independent in activating mute and unmute with that wireless switch because it's the space bar key. Custom cursors. Gosh, years and years ago, there was a very expensive thing from RJ Cooper called Biggie Cursor, and it was designed to help students be able to locate the cursor on the screen. So this custom cursors is a free, and there's a variety of fun and playful cursors that you can use that could help focus visual tracking and attention. Grammarly, Grammar Checker, I use it, my kids use it, my kids at school, many of the kids that use it at school that I work with. Google Dictionary is an online dictionary and it pops up within the document. So it's a pop-up, so you don't have to go to another tab. Voice In allows you to do voice typing within whatever document that you're in. Auto Highlight. Okay, this one I'm going to use forever because this highlight, it text highlights, but it limits the amount that you can highlight. So for those students who haven't quite figured out what's important and what's not, it's not going to let them highlight the whole passage. So I'm going to use that one even when we're back in person fully. And then the next 3 are really for executive function. So Block and Focus, it's a website blocker, and so it blocks specific sites during study time. Visor is a screen dimmer and a reading aid, and it reduces eye strain and can increase concentration. And Mercury Reader removes distracting content and those pop-ups, so you don't have that temptation to click on an ad or a pop-up. And so there are millions of, not millions, but there are so many extensions. So my warning is that decide what you need and try it out. If you download too many extensions, you're going to slow your browser down. And there is something for teachers that would be helpful, and it's called Extensity. It's also an extension, but it organizes your extension and helps your browser work more efficiently. But I would say try out one or two, get used to it, and then decide if you need it. If you don't need it, just get rid of it and try something else. So next slide. Also, before, I'm just going to talk about extensions. If you have a question about low vision, I can, there are a couple things a couple extensions that you might want to look into. But again, I would encourage you to reach out to your vision teacher and see what's going to be most successful in trying those out. So some of this is a review of what Deb had talked about. So basically thinking about what strategies from school might work at home, schedules, timers. I really love the idea of bins for home versus school, because what's happening is I'm now making school part of home. And for many kids, we know that sometimes they hold it together at school, and then at home, that's their release. And so now we have to try to manage that and remember that home needs to be the source of comfort, but now we're asking it to be the source of comfort and the source of learning. So having a bin where, say, the iPad that we play games on goes in the bin during learning time, and having another bin where here's our school materials. Now, I know as a parent of 3, it's not always easy to be that organized. So just a thought, having a designated learning space, but keeping flexibility in mind. So do you need a yoga ball to sit in? Do you need a chair with, you know, a soft chair, a hard chair? Just as we would offer flexible seating options with children in school, we want to think about that at home. So if you have a swing at home, or if your student likes the treadmill, how can you incorporate that in? Routine is super, super important, and here's why. We all have routines, but we don't know why. Well, here's the neurological reason. Routine and ritual is actually helps calm your fight and flight response in your limbic system, and that allows you to then use more learning and brain power to actually learning the target, goal, objective. Reinforcement tools like First Then and token charts, and motivating online reinforcement games and things to do. Sorry, I'm going super, super quick. I'm going to try to wrap up in 5 minutes because I don't, I want to give you guys a chance. So next slide. So this is an example. It's from my colleague, Meagan Bustamantes. This is a schedule example. It's set up in Google Slides. You can see it says today is, then the student clicks on the day. It brings them to their schedule. There's embedded links within that schedule. And then to the right of that is the daily checklist. And then on the bottom, you see the days of the week again. They can click on there and it will bring them back. So it's a way within Google Slides to almost make it like an iPad, which is kind of cool. So next slide. This is very similar. It's Megan's work. She has a little social story within this Google slide, and it's a First Then. So I will, next slide. So this goes along with what Deb was saying about personal interests. What are your students' passions? How can we make that work for them? And last year we did, as a 4th grade team, we collaborated a lot to get us through remote learning. In May and June, when we were supposed to be going on field trips with our students, we had our essential art teachers come in and our PE teacher took us to the Olympic Stadium in Los Angeles. And of course, that was a hit with kids who had sports interests. And our art teacher took us to the Met. So this year, there was a new baby panda born at the National Zoo in DC. And so it's a live webcam. And so I've used that with some of my students to, you know, oh, the baby panda was born on, I think it was August 21st or something. Oh, we're going to check the live cam today. How old is the panda? And counting the days. And the panda is so cute, and it's gone from about this big to big. And so that's just one of the cool things that I liked. I'm going next slide. I'm cranking right around here. Personal interests, and I think I might have to maybe just do one more slide after this one. So I am working with many students that are enrolled in our totally remote, we call it our VLA program. And our middle school is doing personal interest projects. Sometimes these are called Genius Hour projects, but they're really focused on what students are interested in and can do. So this is a modified PIP survey with multiple choice, visual selections. So the first question is things I like or like to do. The second is things I don't like to do. Again, so important to know, because if a student dislikes music, then the last thing I want to do is show music videos either at the beginning or end of my session. And so those relate to, you know, why are we learning? What's the engagement in learning? And then the next question is, I think I'm good at. And so really trying to get a student to express what's the best way to have them express themselves, and some things that are hard for me to do. I feel good about myself when and so there are fill in the blank options. And then I learn how to do things when you know, when I move, when I read, when I write, when I make something. So next slide. This was one of my favorite ones. It's just some quick reference for activities. And next slide. This is digital math tools. So when you go to Toy Theater, just select teacher tools and you will find everything that you use in your classroom for manipulatives. And I feel like I'm out of time, but I'll go through the next couple slides really quick. So books, going to the, you know, I used to just grab a book from the library, but I've been using YouTube a lot. The Sherlock Center at Rhode Island has a bunch of adapted books, both from picture books to classics that you would use in the middle school and high school. Epic is a program that's has limited use without a paid subscription, so during school hours. Books is the same thing, and Storyline Online is a resource that has famous people reading books. And then next slide. So one of the hardest things was how to work with kids using AAC systems. And so these were some of the resources. I have a paid subscription to AAC Language Lab, but they do have free activities. Saltillo also has some free activities. And then the AAC coach actually gives core vocabulary lists, activity specific. So whether it's washing dishes or blowing bubbles or setting the table, your target words. And then if you search for younger kids and even some older kids, Mr. Clay and Christopher Jensen, they have songs and little playful activities related to core words. And next slide. Home activities, next slide. I'm gonna whip through staying connected, just some general ideas on how to stay connected. And finally, last slide, and then I'll Stop. So behavior, regulation, and social skills. So Julia Cook is a guidance counselor, and she's done a ton of books like Soda Pop Head and I Can't Believe You Said That, and But It's Not My Fault. So during the pandemic, she recorded books, and so it's called Julia Cook Bookends. So you'll have access to those titles, many of those titles, and they work well with Michelle Garcia Winner's Unthinkables and Thinkables. And then the Go Noodle, and you can just advance the next slide. But you saw that blue link there. So in my slideshows for my students, I often just put the link. So these are some Go Noodle activities that I really like for calming and relaxation. There's a bunch of resources out there, but I like Go Noodle just because of student friendliness, and I find them very calming. And I'm so sorry I went over, but we had said that we could stay until about 4:10, 4:15. So, and then I threw in OT activities because who doesn't want OT activities? That was really quick, sorry.
Well, that was a whole lot of resources. So no one put any questions in chat, but if anyone would like to ask a question, to please go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask your question. So Martha, I see your hand is up.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for doing your presentation. I really appreciated how candid you were about the multiple hats you're all wearing. So from my heart, thank you so much. My question's really for the parent who has a student who really isn't engaged, and the parent is having a tough time on remote learning, engaging the student. What suggestions can you make for that parent, or steps she can take?
So I am seeing a couple students that is definitely an issue. So for example, we are going, they are doing world geography, and the student's passion right now happens to be angry birds. So we're looking at birds around the world. Sometimes it's really hard to find those nuggets that are gonna kind of hook kids in. The thing is that if the work and the effort that it requires is greater than the motivation, then you're not going to get much. So it's a balance of motivation factors and then adjusting and accommodating the expectations in the work. Does it, Meg and Deb, do you guys want to add on to that?
And I think you've got it right, Amy. What I would add is, in some ways, the engagement question is the same question that we have to ask ourselves sometimes when kids are in school with us about what's going to engage them in the learning. It's just more complicated. And what I would add to what Amy shared is it also goes back to that issue of establishing your team's structure for collaboration so that you can keep going with that conversation. Is the lack of engagement because of a task that has to be more interesting and more personalized, or is it because there's an access issue and we're not getting to that access issue properly? So I think just emphasizing the collaboration, and it's hard. I mean, we also know that there are some kids who need to be remote, and remote's not the best way to learn. That's a really tough place to be. So, but the more that we can lean on the collaboration, which is also difficult in this structure, the better.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, I have a quick question. Often when we talk to parents at VFN, we start to think about extended school year services as winter is winding down, and this is a really unusual year. And I know that schools are, trying to do assessments to figure out where kids are. Do you have any recommendations as to how that's going to work this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say what we are when we think about this, we're trying to keep one foot in the normal when and how do you have extended school year conversations, and one foot in the how do we have those conversations specific to the impact that COVID would have had. Because with the foot in the like normal process part, this is the time of year when teams start to think about how did a student do this year, or how have they done in the past? How, do they recoup their skills when they miss things? Do they just need that repeated instruction because of the nature of their disability? All of the typical conversations. And what we try to get the team to do, and I think this is important for actually both COVID and regular, is focus the conversation at this time of year, focus the conversation on the what. If a student's going to need something different, what is that? Is it, what are the areas? What's the type of instruction? Because it's still a couple of months before we will have a solid sense of the how and the structure and the, what will we be able to do in the summer? So it allows teams to start the conversation without sort of landing right now on what it will be, because it is hard. I know for ourselves, we've just started the process of planning for a summer. We are assuming it will be a summer that looks a little more normal than a summer like last year, which was our first attempt at bringing kids back, which was really tricky. But the reality is we don't really know that. We don't know what the vaccine status will be. Will we still be wearing masks and 6 feet apart, or will we be closer? And so because of that, I think teams should start the conversation right now on the what. What did their data look like? How did they do on our local assessments? Did they lose more skills than they normally lose? How are they doing on their IEP goals? And really leaning on the process that already exists. And the other piece, which I think is a positive, is that even for students not on IEPs, districts are starting to think about learning impacts of the pandemic. And there will be federal dollars potentially available to school systems to be able to remediate that. And this actually has nothing to do with special education, but more a recognition of impact. So it's possible that summer programs could be more robust than they have been in the past, at least for this year, in sort of a catch-up construct. So that's an exciting possibility. It's one we don't know a lot about, but it's definitely on our minds.
Okay, so we are a little after 4. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, so thank you to Meagan Roy, Deborah Morris, and Amy Coach Dietz for today's excellent workshop. You'll see the link to an evaluation in chat. I think it was put in a couple of minutes ago. So please take a few minutes to complete it so we can make improvements and also fulfill our grant requirements. So next slide. We have many more interesting workshops coming up, and you can find details about those on the homepage of our website, vermontfamilynetwork.org, along with the links to our previously recorded workshops. Please also save the date for our 2021 virtual annual conference on April 8th and 9th. Our theme is Imagine, Inspire, Innovate. And we are excited to have 2 internationally known keynote presenters joining us. Registration information will be coming soon. We have tons of information on our website, and getting connected to us is easy. You can follow us on Facebook or join our closed Facebook page if you are a parent. The name of the closed Facebook page is Vermont Families of Children with Special Healthcare Needs. You can also sign up for our monthly e-news or check out our YouTube channel. So next slide. So we are here to help. Please contact us by phone or email. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. I see someone raise their hand. Andrea,
I just had a quick question. I was
Sure.
the survey popped up as I clicked on it. And I remember at registration too, that only choosing one best answer on parent professional is really hard if there's a way to say both, because I provide telehealth and remote learning, but I also am a mom of a young lady who's 11 with ADHD and dyslexia. So like both of those roles, I know a lot of us juggle those. And if there's a way to pick both in the future, or to report that back to grants that some of us are in both roles, that would be wonderful. I don't know if it's possible or not, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Yeah, well, we'll take that.
Have a great day.
You too. So everyone have a great day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.